Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome back to our Salaat program in this month of holy month of Ramadan, and as we are discussing how to pray a good prayer. So I would like to introduce our guests. We have with us Sukaina Fatma, Noor Fatma and Tahireen Fatma, and they will be reading the book which we have prescribed for this program, which is, again, I'll remind you, it's called How to Pray a Good Prayer. This is the book that we are going through. We have reached up to page number 25, isn't that correct? Yes? Okay.
24.
24 and 25, yes. So, kids, let's start the discussion. What did we discuss yesterday?
Fatma, would you like to start?
Yesterday we discussed that prayer is a living thing and it has feelings too. So if you miss a prayer, it has feelings and it'll get upset.
Very good.
We also discussed mentors and how that sometimes we might want to receive help from other people, but also that prayer itself is our mentor.
Very good.
We also learned about how your knowledge can also guide you.
Very good. That's a very good point. So yes, this is what we discussed about the prayer itself. That prayer is a mentor. Prayer is a living being that has feelings. So you can also offend prayer. So now I have a question. How can you offend prayer? How can you make prayer be upset with you?
Not praying on time, deliberately.
That's good. What about you, Noor?
Not praying focused, you're not focusing while praying or rushing your prayer.
Yes.
Not praying on time and delaying it by purposely till the last minute.
Yes. So prayer is a living being. Now imagine you have to go to some place where there's a job interview. Would you go there on time or would you go late?
On time.
Why would you go on time?
First impression.
Yeah.
So the first impression, why? Because you want to get that job, yes?
Yeah.
And you don't want to lose out. Other people will be there as well. So they're competing for this position. And so if you reach there late, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour or 2 hours, will they accept it?
No.
So the same concept we should apply for our Creator. So when He's asked us to come and see Him at a certain time, do you think it's respectful to delay that time?
No.
Because Allah is the most important person. Through Him we get everything. Even the job that we're applying for example, is also because of Him. So how can we put this very important act of worship, at the very back of our list, at the very end? So this should be always priority. Our salat, our prayers should always be a priority for us, because if we don't do this, then we're not really serving the purpose of us being in this world. And inshallah we'll understand more as we go through the book of how we can respect prayer. So we've now finalized that prayer is a living creation. It exists, it has feelings, it is aware, and it can get offended. And just to give you some incident in Rasulullah's time. So there was a woman during the Prophet's time, may peace be upon him, and she committed a very grave sin. So what she did was she gave birth to a child out of wedlock, and then what she did with that baby was she killed it. And not just that, she did something to the baby. She put it in vinegar, and then she sold the bottles of vinegars with the dead body or something like this to the Muslims. So this is her grave sin. So she did a lot of sins, and the final sin was she killed an innocent baby, and I think she burnt it, and the ash of that baby she put in the vinegar bottle, and she sold that vinegar to the Muslims. Now why she did that, I don't know, but then she felt guilty. Her conscience from inside started saying, what did you do? Why did you do this? And she was very worried. So she runs to the Prophet, may peace be upon him, and she reaches his presence, and there's a few of his disciples sitting there. And she says, Ya Rasulullah, I've done a great sin, please Allah won't forgive me. Rasulullah says Allah does forgive, Allah's merciful. But no, Rasulullah, I've done a very big sin and I can only speak to you. So Rasulullah says to his disciples if they should leave and let the woman in privacy discuss her situation. So she explains what she's done to Rasulullah. And it's a serious sin that she's committed. Rasulullah goes red. He's angry, but he controls his anger because Rasulullah is a an ethical person. He knows how to manage himself. And then he says, before I tell you the punishment so that you cleanse yourself from this sin, do you know why you did this sin? Do you know the reason as to the cause of this? She said, no, Rasulullah, what was the reason that I committed such a grave act? He said, because you were not paying attention to your Zuhr and Asr prayer. So she would miss those prayers or she would pray late. So because of that, missing that prayer, it didn't protect her from going towards this vice. She went so deep into this vice that she couldn't come back out of it. So prayer can also get offended. And then because of her ignoring that prayer, the Zuhr Asr prayer, it took revenge on her in a way. How it took revenge? It didn't help her. It let her stay in that pit. So as I said, as this book said, prayer is a mentor, so it can either guide you or it can leave you to your own devices and then you'll go yourself down the pit. Does that make sense? Yes? Yeah. So this prayer, if you don't do it properly, it can also curse on you. So it can say, may land be on you for you wasting my time or you coming late for prayer. Because all the other prayers that other people are praying, they're going on time towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you come lazy and like this and the prayer is looking at you. Look, I've been waiting for you such a long time. Now you've come and you're praying like this. You're not even thinking about Allah and you're not really in a good manners. So we have to be very careful. Think of it as a human being. How would you want to treat another person? So imagine yourself, how would you like to be treated? Would you like to be treated that someone comes on time and meets you, talks to you politely, with well manners, properly, with a proper accent, not rudely? Yes? The same thing goes with Salaat. The same principles you apply. Just imagine it's another person right in front of you and you're talking to that person. That's a formula for you children to follow when you next pray your Salaat. So you need to pray your Salaat. So don't just listen from one ear and take it out the other ear, and you don't practice this in your worship. So when you do this prayer, do it normally. Don't read it fast. Imagine you come to someone, hi, la, 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 like this, you're talking. How would that be? Huh? How would you feel?
Disrespectful.
It's rude. It's disrespectful. You want to have a proper conversation. Imagine I start speaking really quickly. So can you do this and do that? You say, well, calm down. What's going on? So when you come to the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prayer is looking at you and seeing how you're behaving, and it wants to hear proper sound. Yes, so the wajib prayers, the compulsory prayers, you should read slowly. Okay? But then the mustahab prayers you can read fast. That's not an issue. Okay? Does that make sense? So can I ask Nur Fatma if you could start reading from where we left from the last program?
It is possible that some people are experts in religious knowledge, but going towards God doesn't need a special expertise.
Okay, can I just stop you there? So the author is saying you don't need to have expert knowledge to get to God. However, you need to have knowledge of what God is. Does that make sense? Yes? So before you come to prayer, anyone who wants to go on this journey, they need to first, as I've been saying in the previous programs, that you need to know who God is. The more you have this understanding of God, the better your prayer is. For example, we don't even consider our Creator as a being, as human beings, how we treat other human beings. For example, we give them the respect, the way we talk to them. Do we do this in our prayer? Not a lot of us do this. I'm not asking you, don't need to answer that. But that's the situation we're in. A lot of us, 99% or maybe 90% of us, think of prayer as a non-living entity. That's how we see it. We're not giving Allah the respect that Allah deserves because we don't put Him in the position that He should be. He's our Creator. He's created love, He's created feelings, He's created all of these things. So that means He understands these things. We shouldn't consider Allah that Allah doesn't have feelings. He does have feelings because He's the creator of those feelings. But feelings are an inferior thing. We're not saying Allah He has those feelings as a part of Him, but He understands these things. He knows these things. He's created them. So you have to live according to what you are. Okay? You want to be respected, so you should respect your creator. Would you want to be disrespected?
No.
Would you want to stay in a depressed state?
No.
Would you want to be sad? No. And would you want your feelings to be hurt?
No.
So even though Allah doesn't get hurt in that way, because He's not a creation like us. He's a God, He's a creator. But we have to treat Him how we would like to be treated, respectfully. That's the basic minimum requirement I have to explain. Otherwise, there's a lot more philosophy into how God is, what God is, and all these things. This is different. But a minimum level of understanding is I should treat God as I want to be treated. A basic kind of level. And that's how we should pay attention to our Salaat. Can you continue reading?
A prayer itself is a person's mentor. For example, do the following each time after praying. When you want to get up quickly from your praying mat to go and do your work, tell yourself, let me read the recommended invocations for after the ritual prayers too. Contemplate some and read the invocations. Doing this will remove one evil from your soul.
Okay, so a very strong word. Doing this will remove one evil from your soul. So that lady that we were talking about during the Prophet's time, may peace be upon him, she wasn't paying attention to that prayer, so that evil was not being removed from her. And that evil just grew and grew and grew, and then she committed a terrible sin. And then it became like a snow, a ball that rolls up and keeps getting bigger and bigger. So this is what happened with that person. So during this day and age, while we live in this world, in this time where there's a lot of issues, prayer is very important for us Muslims. The reason why you see the whole Muslim world in a mess is because a lot of us are not paying attention to our prayer. And this is a fact. This is also a prediction that our Prophet said during his time to his disciples. He said that a time will come when Muslims will not pay attention to prayer, to Salaat. And we're in that time now, where if you go to the mosques, you don't see them full. Only on special occasions like the Friday prayer maybe, and maybe the Eid prayer after this Ramazan, that we have the Eid al-Fitr prayer. You will see people, but otherwise mosques are empty. Many people, not just Muslims, even non-Muslims, those that do follow a religion, they have seen that people are not going towards religion. They're going towards more animalistic characteristics. They're going to satisfy the desires, the lower desires. For example, they would want to have the best food, and they won't care of how they get that food. They're just going towards their desires without forgetting that they're human beings. And some people have morphed into such evil beings that they kill, they murder, they cheat, they lie, they deceive. We live in this world where these type of people exist. So how do you protect yourself from those type of people? It is a very dangerous world. So have you seen a jungle? In a jungle, you've got lions, you've got tigers, you've got crocodiles, you've got snakes, different types of animals with different types of killing methods. A snake bites you with a poison and kills you. A lion rips you apart. A crocodile, if it grabs you, then it will turn around to rip your meat or something out. So there's different types of eagles you've got. They come from the sky and attack. That's a jungle. And if you get lost in a jungle, you have to protect yourself from all of this. The same is the human world. They are human beings with human faces, but inside them they're either a beast, a snake, a tiger, or something like this. And they're ready to prey on you. Prey means not the prey that we're saying. As a predator, they're ready to attack you, hunt you, and consume you for their own benefit. So in this type of world we live, with these type of people, for example, in the Middle East, if you look at, even in this country, anywhere you go, there are bad people. And they exist. They are under the influence of shaitan. They are now shaitan themselves. So you have to protect yourself from these dangerous, vicious, terrible people. And the only way you can protect yourself, your children, your family, your brothers and sisters, and your mother and father, and your grandparents is by your prayer. This prayer is your best friend. The only friend that you have is your true friend. Then comes anyone else after that. This prayer is your best friend because it's a living being, it's looking at you, it's caring about you. You need to care about this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, good. Continue reading, please.
So, Sakina wanted to read this part.
Yeah. Some of the effects of a good prayer. God would not select a deed to be the pillar of the shelter for religion without any reason.
Slow and clear, please.
God has selected prayer as the pillar for the shelter of religion. This shows that there are many secrets in prayer.
So can I stop you there? So this is the pillar of our religion, the foundation on which we stand. Our religion is based on. All our imams, they died, they were shaheed, they were martyred for this very purpose, that the prayer survives. Especially Abu Abdullah, Imam Hussain. His sacrifice, his family sacrifice, his companion sacrifice, and the woman of Rasulullah at that time, their sacrifice was for this very thing. That the name of Allah, the religion of Islam, and this prayer remains. Remember that this prayer, because with what happened in Karbala, is a very unique story, where you had both camps were Muslims, and they both were praying.
Wow.
So they were both praying, they both were doing Salaat. But how come one side camp was on the right path and the other side was not on the right path while they both prayed? Fatma, do you want to answer that? Can you pass? Can you?
Is it because the other side didn't pray well or didn't focus on their prayer?
No. It's because before you even enter prayer, Salaat, there's some preliminaries, as I was discussing with you before, that you need to do wuzu and some criteria. For example, you need to know Allah. So those people that were praying, they didn't really understand who Allah is and who Allah sent. So they accepted Islam, they became under the umbrella of Islam, they became Muslims, but in their hearts, they did not have Islam. So when you saw them as Muslims, but inside was not Islamic, was not a believer. So you need to have both your appearance, the front and the inner side, the outer and the inner, have to be in par with one another. So if you're saying La ilaha illallah, you have to be believing it as well. So when we pray, our qibla, our direction, our focal point is Wadi Kaaba. So that's a physical direction. But then there has to be an internal qibla. What should your internal qibla be? The qibla of your heart.
Understand?
No. Allah. So you should have Allah's belief inside you, the love of Allah, the love of Ahlebait, and all of this. So they were praying towards the qibla, but their internal qibla was not correct. It was not in the right direction. It was towards this world. They loved the world. So they became Muslims for the world. They didn't become Muslims for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why their prayer was not a true prayer. It wasn't even a prayer. Because you have to have the outer and the inner same. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's why we have Surah Munafiqun in the Quran. We have about the kuffar. And we have about these people that they are munafiqs. They call themselves Muslims, but from inside they are not Muslims. And this is the reason why the problem in the Muslim world is because of these individuals. That they would call themselves Muslims, but they were not Muslims. They would be with us as believers, but they were not acting as believers. And that's the biggest danger for Muslims in this day and age as well. For example, spies. You have spies that come in as, oh, we are Muslims, they become religious, they show themselves as religious, and we all start believing, oh no, this is a religious person. Why? They want to put a poison there. So their internal is a snake. They have a venom. That venom is giving us wrong information, misleading us. But when they first come, they come slithering in as a snake. We don't understand who they are because we see, oh, for example, someone with my clothes. You would think, oh, this is a religious person, for example. But what about the inside? Maybe I've come with an agenda that I want to misguide. Then how do you tell? So you have to see not just the outer, but the inner. And you judge that by the way the person talks, what they're talking about. All of this has to be seen. Does that make sense? Good. Continue reading, please.
If we fix our prayer, we won't need anything else because the prayer itself fixes other deeds. The effect and the blessings from prayer are very great. Prayer is a special and specific facility which has been given to us to help us solve our material and spiritual problems. Prayer has many functions and amazing effects on a person's soul. For example, it has been narrated that when Abu Ali Sina wasn't able to solve a scientific problem, he would go to the mosque and pray a 2 cycles prayer. Then he would solve that problem. This shows that prayer can do many things, but unfortunately we haven't used it correctly. In the following, we will mention some of the effects and blessings from prayer.
So thank you. Right. So before we continue the next part is basically discussing about the benefits of prayer and what we can, the effects of prayer. What are the effects? The effects only take place once your outer and your inner is in one direction. Okay? That's one of the basic requirements of how your prayer will be accepted. If, for example, let's say, for example, someone who doesn't believe in Allah starts praying, do you think that prayer will have an effect? Because it's just as appearance. It's not really from the inside. So the root has to be from the inside. And that's why those people that martyred Imam Hussain were not really Muslims. They were just showing themselves as Muslims, but their inner was kuffar. You can't kill the grandson of the Prophet, who is a pillar of Islam.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
So, you said that if a non-Muslim prayed like a prayer wouldn't be a proper prayer. And we were talking about how prayer is alive. So I was thinking, does prayer become alive based off of our belief in it?
No, it's always existing.
Oh.
It's always been there. It's existing. It's existed even before we came into this world. So it's in existence, it exists, but for example, it will only come to those people that are under the umbrella of Islam. So for example, once you say La ilaha illallah, you've now moved away from the darkness into a castle. And in that, Salaat exists. And then it joins you, it becomes your companion. And then it's with you till even after death, till you enter heaven. It will always be with you. It's your companion, it's your friend, it's your action that you see as a real living thing. But before that, it doesn't exist for you because you're not a Muslim. So it still exists, it's always been existing, but it's not connected with you. Okay?
So for the kafirs, they didn't have the prayer then?
No, they didn't have it.
Oh.
It was existing for them, but they never benefited from it.
Okay.
They didn't understand. They were in that darkness. You have to come into the light to see those light beings. Okay? While you're in the darkness, you're with the devilic, the demons and the devils and those type of creations of Allah. But if you want to move into the Islamic or into this castle, then there are other creatures that live there. For example, Salaat exists there. Angels are there, and this is where we want to be. This is a basic explanation, but there's an in-depth explanation of Salaat as well. But I think for the viewers and for yourself, this much is enough for now.
Should we read the benefits?
Yes, so if I could ask Fatma, if you could read, please.
Reducing the deficiencies in life. Whenever you see a deficiency in your life, material or immaterial, spiritual or physical. Check your prayer as a first step. Maybe you're not putting enough effort into your praying. Of course, a believer has problems and difficulties in this world. Sometimes he becomes sick, becomes entangled, or has an accident. A believer becomes entangled with problems. However, if you feel that your problems have become too many and are overwhelming you, or you feel that these problems shouldn't bother you this much, you probably haven't put enough effort into your praying. Fix your prayer, and if God wills, your problem will be solved too.
Okay, can I stop you there for a minute? So, the title was Reducing the Deficiencies in Life. So, none of us are perfect. We have some perfections in us and some imperfections in us. None of us are perfect. So, in some places we will excel, in some places we'll be stuck. Does that make sense? Okay? But we want to reach perfection in all things. So prayer is the source that will start perfecting you in those places that you are deficient in. For example, it could be if you're studying, for example, there'll be some subjects you're weak at. Then prayer will help you in those subjects, for example. That's an example I'm giving you. Maybe in some place you have anger management, where you get angry quickly. So then Salaat will help you in that deficiency, where you will slowly master how to control your anger. So none of us are perfect. We're on a journey, and in that journey we're learning ourselves. We're learning our weaknesses, we're learning our strengths, and we're trying to fix our weaknesses. But the first thing that will come and help us is
Prayer.
prayer. Yes. So the first effect of praying is that it reduces your deficiencies. So those things that you're weak in, it start reducing that weakness and makes them into strength. If I could ask Fatma to continue reading this part.
It is the same matter. It is the same way in spiritual matters too. Sometimes a believer wants to sin, or Satan tempts him. Sometimes a believer makes a mistake. But if you see that your mistakes are taking you out of the circle of life, and your spiritual situation is getting worse to the extent that you are not in contact with God, the first thing you have to do is fix your prayer. Tell yourself, it is obvious that I'm praying badly.
Okay, stop here. So prayer is like a shield as well. It tries to throw away the attacks of the devil, shaitan. So shaitan is like a predator who's hiding behind the bush and just looking at you, stalking you. And it's just waiting for you to make a little mistake, and it pounces. How does it pounce? It whispers. It tells you something bad. It agitates your self, the lower self, the animalistic side, for example, for something. And so prayer is there to shield you from that kind of attack. And even if the attack happens, then it will try to reduce the damage that you get from this attack. Continue reading.
Surely you have seen how sometimes when people are entangled in problems, they say, God, what have I done that I have to suffer this much misery? If a person wants to state this correctly, he should say, Oh God, am I praying badly that I have to become so entangled in problems?
Okay, so if you're stuck in a situation that is just not resolving, then that means somewhere our prayer is not working, or your prayer is not sufficient enough, or you're not praying properly. That is the reason why this problem is not becoming resolved, especially for Muslims. This is an issue for Muslims. So if you are entangled in a situation that is not being resolved, then pay attention more to your prayer. And if even then it's not being resolved, then there's some other issues that it needs more time to be resolved. But the first source is check your prayer. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right, can I ask the next person to read?
2. Regulating a human being's soul. After having worked for a length of time, the synchronization of the inner parts of any machine will become mixed up, and as a result, it won't work well. Therefore, it needs to be regulated occasionally. The engines of cars should be regulated periodically so that they work better. Today, they regulate engines with special computer devices. Whoever has a car should take his car once in a while and have it regulated with these devices.
Okay. So it started off with an example of a car, a vehicle, and it says that during some time the car needs again fixing. It needs to be attuned to drive normally again. For example, the engine oil has to be changed, the tires have to be changed, all these kind of things have to be done to the car so that it can be able to work properly, it can operate properly on the road. So this is what the author started off with, and if you continue reading, Noor.
A human being's soul is more delicate, more complicated, and more vulnerable than the engine of a car.
Okay, so it gave an example of the car and its engine and how we have to tune that engine so that it keeps operating properly. A human being's engine is the heart that's pumping. Okay, not just that. This is not just the heart that we're talking about, it's our mind as well. So it's more delicate than this car. It's more sophisticated. It needs also fixing, because when you keep working on something, it starts wearing out, the parts start breaking, it needs service. For example, if you look at the car, every year we have to take it for service. The engine oil needs to be changed, all these things have to be fixed again so that it can again drive properly. Same happens with us. Throughout the day we're living, we're breathing, we're eating, we're getting so many thoughts and so many things happening. It's wearing us out, it's tiring us up. These cells are worshipping as well. Each cell is a living being, it's worshipping. It's also getting tired. So how do we fix all of this? So if you continue reading, we'll get the answer from the author itself.
The material which is used in making the engine of a car is steel. However, the soul of a person is delicate and sensitive. The soul of a human being is hurt, becomes disordered, and its regulation may become impaired in the course of everyday life. Prayer is a device to regulate the soul of a person. A person should regulate his soul 5 times a day. When the regulation of a person's soul becomes impaired, he should quickly regulate his soul with praying. If you see that your memory is becoming weak, or if you are having problems like depression, being nervous, and many other mental illnesses, first of all, check your praying. See what is wrong in your praying. If your thinking isn't working correctly, you should guess that it may be because of your praying. Maybe the amount of prayer in your blood has decreased, and you should inject a few units of prayer into your soul. Most probably, you will find peace in this way.
Okay, did you understand that? Yes? So prayer, the second effect of prayer is that it tunes your body, mentally and physically.
It calms it down.
It calms it down. So it calms the soul down. It refines the soul. So that if the soul is getting tired, worn out, it refines it back, gives it the energy that it needs. So then physically also, for example, depression and mental issues that you have, they also start becoming resolved as well. For example, if your memory is becoming weak, so the Salaat, the prayer, will help your memory become strong again. Okay? 3.
3. Reforming our worldly affairs. Prayer is not just for building our life in the hereafter. It is also for building and repairing the worldly affairs of
a person too.
It is wrong if we say that the result of prayer can only be seen in the hereafter.
Can I stop you here? So as I said, some people think we're praying for the hereafter. That's not true. We're praying for this world as well, for our body as well, for our soul as well, and for the hereafter. So prayer is not just for the hereafter, it's also for the present time that we're currently in this world that we live in. It also affects this world as well. Continue reading, yep.
If a person is supposed to worship for the hereafter, should he first be a normal and balanced person so that he will be able to worship and be a servant? If a person wants to worship correctly and reach God, he must first live correctly. If a person wants to live correctly, he has to pray first. Pray so that with all the suffering that exists in the world, you will enjoy your life and feel satisfied. Then you will become friends with God, who has gifted you this beautiful and pure life. As long as a person doesn't As long as a person doesn't enjoy his life, he won't become friends with God. A moody, bad-tempered person won't go toward God. This kind of person is always entangled with himself and with others. A person must live correctly. For him to live correctly, he must first pray correctly.
Did you understand that?
Yeah.
What did you? So what was the author trying to say at this point? So the title was Reforming Our Worldly Affairs. And then the author speaks about that the prayer is not there just only for the hereafter, it also works for your present environment that you're living in. Okay, the surrounding that you're in. So, for example, if you are praying properly, then you should be feeling happy with your surrounding. You should be feeling secure in your surrounding, and then you feel like you are the friend of Allah. But if you're not paying attention to that, then you will not enjoy your life. You will be a moody person, a depressed person, and not really realizing what you are doing in this world. Okay? And also, it will not help you fulfill your full potential that you've come to do in this world. So whatever your aim and targets are, remember, before this world, we were existing as well. This flesh is just a vehicle for us. So before this, we existed, and even after this body dies, we leave this body, we also exist. Okay? So now the question here is, how do we make our affairs proper? Otherwise, what happens is we get entangled in different things. And the only thing that can get us out of those entanglements is our prayer. Otherwise, you get stuck in a rut. For example, two friends, they're having a fight. They become enemies. Why? Because they don't pray. Then this enmity keeps growing and growing, for example. And there's nothing to stop them, to pull them out from this enmity. And Salaat is the thing that gets you out of those entanglements. Of course, you will come through up and down in your life. There will be turns and curves where you might even fall down and get up, but then Salaat is there to pick you up. Some people fall down and they're always falling down. For example, there's those type of accidents that you have where you're driving a car and then you have a spinal injury. You can't ever walk again. So these kind of disasters are big disasters. But if you start praying, and with praying you do give charity, then it protects you from those kind of horrific disasters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can I ask the next part?
4. The key to reaching spiritual stations. The late Ayatullah Qadi was a mentor of Ayatullah Bahjat. Imam Khomeini said that Ayatullah Qadi was a mountain of mysticism. Ayatullah Bahjat constantly narrated this sentence from the late Qadi when he gave advice. If a person prays his obligatory prayers on time but doesn't reach the high standards, he may curse me.
High stations.
Or high stations, he may curse me. Or at another time he said, he may spit on my face. One of the scholars related, many years ago I went to visit Ayatullah Bahjat. I told him, show me a way so that I can become a real human being. Ayatullah Bahjat said, pray on time. This honored scholar thought, he didn't pay much attention to me. I am praying my prayers on time. He continued, 1 year passed after that meeting. I was going to a gathering where I would meet Ayatullah Bahjat too. I told myself on the way, let me ask again this time and see if he will introduce a way so that I can reach to everything. What way will he introduce? When I went, there were a few of us, and he was talking. I still hadn't said anything when he said in the middle of his talk, some people ask me, what should we do to become a real human being and grow? I say, pray on time. They go and come back the next year and tell themselves, he didn't pay attention to me. I should have asked him again to see what I should do. They haven't listened or done exactly what I said. Now, they want to ask again. As I said, the answer is the same. The answer is always the same. This honored scholar said, I didn't say anything. Ayatullah Bahjat was right. I hadn't prayed some of my prayers on time. I started to fix those too. Gradually, that honored scholar reached to the station that he wanted, and even more than he had imagined.
So, prayer also elevates your spiritual journey, because the whole point of us human beings is to keep increasing our spiritual power, our spiritual awareness, our spiritual insight. Does that make sense? And the only way we can do this is by praying on time. Okay, I think we will end the program at this time because I can see you are tired. It's taking an effect on you. So let's just summarize. We haven't finished it. There's only a page left for this chapter, and but we'll do this on the next program. So far we've discussed a lot of stuff about prayer, the importance of prayer. Prayer is a living entity. It exists, it's aware, it has intelligence, it has a conscience, and the benefits of prayer, the effects of prayer. We've discussed all those things. So there were 4 points that we discussed of the effects of prayer. One was reducing the deficiencies in life, regulating a human being's soul, reforming our worldly affairs, and raising our spiritual station. So our spiritual power, our spiritual awareness, our insight, all of this increases as well as we focus on our prayer. Yeah? I think we'll end the program with this. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for watching this program. If you have any questions, inshallah, we'll also provide an